Always good to see everybody today. A nice little Dodge day up on the hill. We are going to launch into Genesis. I'm excited about that. As far as any current events and that type of thing to say, we marching on in Epiphany. We have one more Sunday, couple more Sundays before Transfiguration. Or maybe three more Sundays. This Sunday, then it's the first Sunday, no, two more Sundays before Transfiguration, so some more Sundays of Epiphany, and then we enter our Lenten journey. Excited to share our pastoral care assistant and seminary student, Kim Grasmick, will be preaching this Sunday for us, so that's exciting. She's got some great thoughts going there, and so that's very cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's basically the scoop, really. So I've been thinking about Genesis a lot, obviously, and if you're not aware that Luther's, it's interesting, St. Augustine, before he died, like the last 5 years or something or more of his life, he was immensely into Genesis. Ironically, that's what Luther was into before he died. He was working on Genesis the last 10 years of his life, truthfully. So that doesn't mean we're going to die being studied. But the great,
work on the 10 years.
We're not going to work on the 10-year plan either. We're going further. But, you know, it's just a book that everything is based on. Although, when you listen and read some things, like the New Testament doesn't quote too much, you know, Genesis 3 and the fall of humanity, you know, it doesn't quote it as much as you would think, although I think it's assumed and there. So, you know, that's just an interesting thing. But in my view, the book of Genesis is foundational for the whole Bible. It lays the foundation of everything. So, so we will keep going in Genesis here, and we ended up last week with the, you know, Adam and Eve doing what they were not supposed to do and not taking responsibility for it and blaming each other. And that's where we left off. I mentioned Luther for a reason. His commentary on Genesis is quite spectacular and amazing. And so what I've done for this morning, just to kind of get us up to speed, is curated a bunch of quotes from Luther about kind of where we've been so far. And I think you'll find them helpful and interesting, because it kind of speaks to some of the things we've been wrestling with. So we'll start there, and then we'll get into the consequences of Adam and Eve, and then perhaps we'll get into chapter 4. We'll see. Okay? Yeah.
Back to what you're talking there.
Sure.
There is a way for us to avoid death.
Yeah.
The rapture happens.
If the rapture happens, yeah. Or as a Lutheran, Christ comes again, then that would do it.
That's what
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to share up the screen and get to Martin Luther here. Just have to go back to the start, and then I have to just do this to our in-house screen. There we go. All right. So again, this is curated over the first, really the second and third chapter of Genesis. Moreover, this helps us learn something about the properties of free will, a subject with which our opponents concern themselves so intensively. So Luther's opponents was the Catholic Church at the time, and Erasmus, who believed that human beings, even after the fall, have free will to choose God. We can choose to do the right, we can choose to believe in God or not. Luther said, no, we don't. We're stuck in unbelief. We're in bondage to sin. We can't free ourselves. That's why we need the word. But this was a big debate. So let's keep going. A subject with which, okay, in a certain way, we indeed have a free will in those things that are beneath us. By the divine commission, we have been appointed lords of the fish of the sea and the heavens. In other words, Luther's going to say we can choose what we want to wear today. You know, we got that. But in those matters that pertain to God and are above us, no human being has a free will. He is indeed like clay in the hand of the potter, in a state of merely passive potentiality, not active potentiality. For there we do not choose, we do not do anything, but we are chosen, we are equipped, we are born again, we accept, as Isaiah says. You know, this is going to be a Lutheran note in the choir of Christianity, that we emphasize God choosing of us, not our choosing of God. We can talk about accepting or receiving, those are fine, but this is important. So that the result of what Adam and Eve did is that now we are in bondage that way. We are stuck. We can't pull ourselves out of the muck. Okay, now, you know, we can debate whether Luther's right about that, but that is a Lutheran note. So let's keep going. Likewise, Adam is here commanded by the Lord before sin, let's back up before sin, to refrain from eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He would have obeyed this command readily and with the greatest joy if it had not been for Satan's deceit. So, you know, we are wrestling with what is the condition of Adam and Eve beforehand. There was a law. What was it? Don't eat of that tree and enjoy all this other stuff. So there was a law, but so the law of Moses comes after. It's a little different. Ross, yeah.
We don't know that he wouldn't have eaten that fruits.
We don't know that he wouldn't have eaten if it wasn't for the devil.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. How so?
Well, you can't.
Yeah, because it
you
happened.
can't. Yeah,
So we
that's-
don't.
yeah.
It's hard to go back. Yeah, I think here Luther's positing the fault with the devil, that he's the one that was behind this, and that had that not happened, that Adam might not have. But you're right, Ross. I guess we ultimately don't know. But it is as if God were saying, you can indeed remain in the life for which I've created. Now we're still talking about pre-fall, so to speak. As if God were saying, you can indeed remain in the life for which I have created you, and yet you will not be immortal in the same way as the angels. So right now they eat of the tree of life, and so they don't die. But they're not like angels at this point. Your life is, as it were, placed in the middle. So he uses this term. So before they fell, they're in the middle. They're creatures, they're created by God. They eat of the tree of life, so they don't die, but they're in the middle. They haven't, so you can remain in it and afterwards be carried to an immortality that cannot be lost. So Luther, and again, this is just Luther's pondering on this story. He's thinking that Adam and Eve, if they hadn't fallen and disobeyed and distrust, etc., that they would have lived their life and they wouldn't have died, but at some point God would have moved them into the next level, I guess you could say. Be carried to an immortality that cannot be lost. Contrariwise, if you do not obey, you will become a victim of death and lose your immortality. So that was their state beforehand, the way Luther envisions it as he reads it. It's interesting. So before we go to original sin, so what we wrestled, Joyce was wrestling, not, we weren't wrestling, but you know, just kidding. Joyce was, and she's still wrestling. It is okay. With, what did God create, where did this, was there a choice? Was there not a choice? And we wrestle with it. We don't know. There's a lot of great answers to some of that. But I guess we talked about that God created with the potential for the things to go bad, because otherwise we'd be robots. That's kind of, I think, was our collective wisdom about it. Luther talks about it as that, let me go back one. That their choice was to remain in God's pleasure and grace and dependent on God for life, or to get wisdom not on God's terms, but their terms. So if they had a choice, that was their choice. Or at least the consequences of their choice. And so, Luther wrestled with it. Everybody that's ever read Genesis wrestles with that. So,
That's a good thing.
yeah. All right, so now, this is after, so now original sin, but original sin really means that human nature is completely fallen. That the intellect has become darkened, so that we no longer know God and his will and no longer perceive the works of God. Furthermore, that the will is extraordinarily depraved, so that we do not trust the mercy of God and do not fear God, but are unconcerned, disregard the word and will of God, and follow the desire and impulses of the flesh. Likewise, that our conscience, okay, let's stop there. So original sin is complete, according to Luther. Our brothers and sisters in the Pentecostal church, probably the Baptist church, don't believe it's complete. This is important. Some Christians do not believe in original sin. And and how do you know that? Because you're fine until you come to an age of accountability. So this is a question. Starting to feel it now. Are you feeling the heat now?
Yeah.
Or what's it reading, Lisa? Okay. You think there could be a problem? That's all we need is another problem around here. The alarm system is going on for no reason. Poor Lisa. It's a broken world. Original sin. Okay, so, and again, these are important theological questions that we wrestle with, but how you view human nature and original sin is the launching pad for your theology. So like Lutherans say, you can't choose God. You need the word and sacrament to come and choose you, and give you the Holy Spirit. Well, if you're not completely, if it's not complete, then you have enough that's in you to choose God. See? And so it really affects your theology from where you go. But so Luther says this, but it's not just this, and this is the key, this word right here, conscience. Likewise, that our conscience is no longer quiet, but when it thinks of God's judgment, despairs and adopts illicit defenses and remedies. What do you think Luther means by that? You've got a bad conscience. So instead of turning to God for forgiveness and grace and mercy, you come up with all kinds of other remedies.
Like Adam did with the.
Yeah, we justify.
That's right. I'm not to fault, I'll blame. That's a good one.
Blame game.
The blame game. And I'm not so bad. I did do most of the law. I'm pretty good. I've never killed anybody. Look at my piety. I go to church every Sunday. I give 1/10 of everything I make. I pray. What?
Like the Pharisee.
Like the Pharisee. Exactly. So that's what Luther means by illicit remedies and defenses. We are terrified, so we defend. Here's another one. There really isn't a God.
We wouldn't have a conscience if there wasn't a God.
Well, right. But in a loving way, I'd like to suggest to some of our unbelieving folks that are you sure you know the motivation for your unbelief? It's a great way to get rid of needing a graceful, merciful God. So interesting, huh? Despairs and adopts illicit defense. These sins have taken such deep root in our being that in this life they cannot be entirely eradicated. So Luther's going to say, because we never get rid of our fallen nature completely, we are, we have the Christ in us. We have now the mind of Christ, but we still battle this our whole life. The tendency, even for Christians, is like, I think I can take care of most. I'll take care of this, God. So anyway, did I see some hands going? No, okay. All right, so that's some more Luther. Here Adam's conscience is roused by the real sting of the law. It is as if God said, you know that you are naked, and for this reason you hid, but your nakedness is my creation. So that's good. That's a beautiful thing, wonderful thing. You are not condemning it as something shameful, are you? Therefore, it was not the nakedness that perplexed you. It was not my voice that frightened you, but your conscience. See, there you go. We're back to that word conscience. That convicted you of sin because you ate the fruit from the forbidden tree. And we kind of talked about that last week, that why was Adam really hiding? On the other hand, he realized that the evil was this, that now he had a bad conscience because of the nakedness in which he had previously gloried as in a unique adornment, and that he was now terrified by God's voice, which previously he had heard with utmost pleasure. Yeah, that's that turn. That is that turn, that now God's voice is terrifying. All right, some more. Thus when, and again, I'm just grabbing little tidbits from a very long thing. Thus, when man has been accused of sin by God, he does not acknowledge his sin, but rather accuses God and transfers his guilt from himself to the Creator. We, of course, looked at that's what Adam did, and in one sense, Eve in a certain sense as well. The outcome is that in this way, sin grows endlessly unless God, through his mercy, grants help. That's what we're stuck in without God's mercy granting us help. Couple more. They can, on this whole blame game, they cannot do otherwise than accuse God and excuse themselves, inasmuch as they see that God is omnipotent and could have prevented those sins. There it is. That's kind of going to what Joyce said. Why didn't God stop it? I like to say, if I told my kid, and there's this beautiful boss there, I said, don't knock that over. Don't knock that over. And when they knocked it over, I swept in and caught it. Would that kid really be free? Yeah, I'm allowing them to do it, but if I come in and stop it, are they really free? They're still a robot. They're still a robot. This is you know, such an awful evil is sin when hearts are not given encouragement in time through the promise of the forgiveness of sins. And such is the working of the law, that when the law stands alone without the gospel and the knowledge of grace, it leads to despair and ultimate impenitence. Do you get what Luther is saying here? I often talk about, you know, the Genesis 3:8 and following as the preeminent experience of law. I'm not just talking about rules, I'm talking about law and gospel. You know, I'm gonna keep getting this into your noggins. Luther said you have to distinguish law and gospel when you read the Bible. If you don't, you will despair. So what is the law? The law says you blew it. And Adam and Eve, you know, they're now in fear of God. They blame God. They're terrified of God. They're blaming. They're denying. And if you don't have a gracious word, you're just going to keep going down that road. And it's an endless road, and it's a tunnel that has no end. But that's what the gospel does. The forgiveness of sins comes in and stops that cycle. And what Luther felt the church in his day was doing, yes, you're a sinner, Luther, so here's some more laws for you to do so you can feel better about yourself. And Luther discovered that don't work. That dog don't hunt. Just doesn't work. The law can't deliver that. Because if you're honest, you never do it. How much more do I have to do it? So that's what the church was giving him, rather than an absolution freely given, that now my conscience is free and clear, and now I'm going to do those wonderful things that everybody wants, you know, wants
But
to,
you fall back again.
and then you fall back again. And so what's the answer? You get back on your knees and you receive that confession and forgiveness again. Yep, yeah.
Do we ever see where Adam and Eve repented?
Good question. Do Adam and Eve ever repent? And where is the grace and forgiveness in this
Well,
story?
that's what I want to know.
Um,
Do they know that there's such a thing as grace by now?
that's a great point. Where do we see gospel in this text? We haven't quite got there.
God didn't remove them from the.
Not yet. He didn't remove them yet. He's going to,
Oh, yeah.
but he clothed them for one. He said, okay, I'm gonna clothe you. And now there's gonna be consequences, and we kind of just need to jump there, don't we, and start reading that. But, and we're gonna hear about his punishment of the serpent, and we're gonna hear something, but well, maybe that's just where we should go. Let's just go read. Let's go read. Let's stop the share here. And we will go get to the text, here. Boom. Okay. Right here. 14, the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. Now remember too, that these ancient stories kind of explain things to people. And so maybe that's part like, why does the snake crawl on, I want to also say that Luther, and I think we should distinguish that the serpent was used by the devil. That's what I would say. The serpent wasn't the devil, but the serpent was used by the devil. But this is what is said then. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
I like the NIV, this crush your head, it just sounds a
He
little more.
shall crush your head,
Yeah.
and you shall crush his heel. I don't know, bruise his, whatever. Is that the same Hebrew word? Let's just see.
Well, I have here, it's crushed, right?
Same Hebrew word.
But I had-
So grip hard, it literally, so crush, bruise, yeah, yeah,
Not what you said, you.
destroy, demolish,
Yeah.
might even be better. Okay, so who are we talking about here? Well, of course, you see all these, look at all these notes here in the New Testament. Well, when some people say that the Old Testament, that Genesis isn't quoted, well, it does appear that way. And in fact, look at Galatians 4, when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under the law. The New Testament sees this talking about who?
Jesus.
About Christ. That this is what, and so one, we see a foreshadowing that there is gospel. God will crush the serpent, this is coming. So that's really important for us to think about. It's interesting, by the way, I discovered that the Latin Vulgate, I used that in the sermon a couple weeks ago, doesn't say he shall bruise your head, it says she. Why? Because they want to get the Virgin Mary in there. That it's really Mary doing that. And
I don't believe that.
no, I know. Well, it's not what the Hebrew says. It says he. So
Every statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary I've ever seen has got her foot on a snake.
got her foot on the snake.
Oh, really?
There you go.
Yeah.
See, yes, that's great, Ross. I hadn't thought about that, but that's right. So that, because, in the Roman Catholic Church, they have a view that Mary is almost divine, not divine, but well, kind of. She's the mother of God, which we believe that too. But yeah, so the Latin Vulgate uses she instead of he. So that we see Mary doing that. But the Hebrew is clearly he shall bruise your head. So we look at that as Christ doing that work. But of course, Adam and Eve, they live a long time before Christ comes. And so note something. Where's the grace here? Because you've done this, cursed are you above all life. Does God have any conversation with Adam? I mean, with the serpent? Nope. Boom. This is it. But look what's happening up here. God's having a conversation with Adam and Eve. God didn't come down when Adam and Eve had done what they did, ate of the tree, and say, you're done. Where are you? What are you doing? Did you eat of the tree? He goes to Adam. Adam, what did you do? Yeah, Eve, what? You know, and you know, sometimes when it's how you read something, like an oral interpretation, you could hear that question that God says, where are you? You could, like, where are you? Or you could be, where are you?
And he does that to us through our conscience, when we do something wrong. Our conscience is, God saying,
is talking to us, right? And then, fortunately, God gives a way out, rather than, you know, and which is the absolution. So I think we see grace in the conversation he's having with Adam and Eve, but he doesn't have that conversation with the serpent. Okay, comments or further questions on the serpent? Yes.
My notes also note that he curses the serpent and the ground, but he doesn't curse Adam.
Perfect. Beautiful. So he doesn't curse Adam and Eve, even though there's consequences, but he does curse. So there's grace there for Adam and Eve, right? Yeah. Excellent. Very helpful, Kathy. That's great. Other thoughts at this stage?
Well, I keep thinking, we're going, that's where are you? Present tense,
Yeah.
not. because
Where have
he
you
did
been?
see them in the garden. They were hiding. Instead of saying, where were you? Where are you?
Yeah. Where are you? That's makes it more just of an
I think he's
encounter.
right there. He's
Yeah.
right there.
Him and then Joyce. Yep.
Well, I'm struggling with choice here. Can't hear her.
We'll try and repeat because they're gonna have trouble hearing.
That is regarding the second person of the Trinity. Okay, so we have this eternal Trinity. Christ is eternal. Christ's eternal purpose has been salvation.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a debate whether God created evil, lets it happen, whatever. But I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have had an eternal savior if he didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, that's what you think. Yeah.
So I imagine there's like a whole section of the Vatican Library on this.
Yes. Yeah.
Is
They have microphones.
this eternal purpose of Christ.
The eternal purpose of Christ. Yeah. Yeah. I know you guys probably having trouble hearing Kim there. So, and by the way, sometimes if you have your volume control on your computer, because some people are further away from the microphone, you can turn it up and then turn it back down when I start to talk, because I'm kind of loud. But anyway, that's a way you might negotiate hearing better. But yeah, so Kim, I think it's a great point. If we think about the second person of the Trinity being eternally begotten of the Father, so the saving work of God, although we don't want to be modalistic necessarily, but that, you know, did God know or expect this to happen? Even, I don't want to say plan for it to happen, but, you know,
I think
yeah.
he intended
Sets it up for them to fail.
He intentionally set it up for fail. Is that good to you or is that bad?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, you know, I think you might be headed in an interesting direction. Because I think about something Paul says in Romans. Do you guys remember this passage? Let's see, Romans. Maybe it's in the 11th chapter. He's talking about Israel and wrestling with why they didn't believe. Let's see, Gentiles grafted in. Yeah, here we go. Look at that.
Yeah.
God has consigned all to disobedience that he might have mercy on all. So I want to say, in my humanness, I want to say, well, God just made potential. Why God wouldn't? But there is this sense that God, of course, that Paul might say, we might say that Paul's talking about after the fall here, you know, but maybe is he talking about before the fall? That's a good question. Bill?
Maybe a different way of looking at this is God created people with the free will to be types of entities we could be, different than animals.
Yeah.
Along with that came the potential to choose wrongly, but God felt that it was more important for us to have that free will to become the people that could relate to him and live in the way that we should live. However, we can choose otherwise.
Yeah.
But he is providing a way to restore us or to give us forgiveness for when we make the wrong choices.
Yeah. That is, that's what makes sense to my logic, Bill. But now that certainly now that Adam and Eve have fallen, before we have that choice, we don't have the choice without his intervention through the Word and the Holy Spirit. We're stuck. Now, the question is were we stuck beforehand? Did God consign the world? I don't know. I think it seems to me, even Luther, as I was reading him, that there is some choice. Do they remain in this beautiful bliss situation, or do they, I don't know. So there was some choice there. But yeah, it's a mystery. Okay, keep going with this. Yeah.
Pastor Bill,
Go ahead.
I'm thinking that God created humankind and has a special relationship with us, but non-human would be the serpent and anything else. And also, I don't consider Satan as being human. He's a spirit of evil that can penetrate, but being a human being is extremely different. I don't know if that came through.
Kathy, yeah.
I guess he didn't.
This meeting is being recorded by the host or a part.
The relationship with God is deeper because of our sin and the mercy than it would have been otherwise. You know how, like, if you have a conflict with somebody that you're close to and then it's resolved, you have that almost cements you together more than if you never had any conflicts with them.
Right. Yeah. Let's see, whoops, shoot. I think that might be a good description of, I'm sorry, let's see. Did I unshare the screen? That might be a really good description of this passage right here. Yeah. So God was, the whole point of it is that God be merciful. And if we are fine and we didn't sin, then there's no need for his mercy.
Or I
So-
wouldn't be aware.
Or you wouldn't be aware of it, I guess, yeah. It's interesting, but this is an interesting question that's really good for us to grapple with, for sure. Yeah, okay, good, Ross.
So we had a Messiah complex?
So we had a Messiah complex? Yeah. I guess in a good way, that he was determined to be merciful and our savior and have us depend upon him, yeah. Yeah,
Perhaps a better way of saying this, for God made man capable of disobedience. And because of that, he provides mercy to give us.
okay,
When we choose wrong.
okay, now, Bill, your intellect is going right there. I love that you just did that. Bill just said perhaps a better way of saying this is that God created us with capable of disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. That's what my human nature wants it to say. It doesn't say that. It says God consigned. This is a word that means imprison. And so that's just a tough one. You know, would God, and so I want it to say that exactly what you said, Bill. Absolutely, yeah.
God's relationship with humans is different. His relationship with angels,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
because
Angels never knew redemption. There's a question on that too, like, because we believe the devil is a fallen angel, right? So that had to have happened before this story even gets started. But now Luther will wrestle with this and he'll say now they don't have the choice of being falling or not. At some point they had that, but now that's been removed. So angels are not the subject of redemption as such. Absolutely. They are not, either they don't need God's mercy because they're like Gabriel and they didn't fall, or they're the devil. You know, think about what Jesus says in Matthew 25. The great parable of the sheep and the goats. Remember that? What does he say to the goats? Go to the place prepared, not for them, but for the devil and all his angels. There is not mercy for the devil. That's done. They are not the subject of his redemption. That, yeah.
we have a song that the angels can't sing.
Yes, we have a song that the angels cannot sing. Wow. That is powerful. That is powerful. And therefore our relationship, now you make me think of Jesus's words to Peter. Hey, Peter, who loves more? The one who's forgiven a little or the one who's forgiven a lot? Peter says, well, of course, the one a lot. That's us. We've been forgiven a lot. And so therefore we love more. When God's mercy creates a relationship and there's nothing like that. Yeah. No, really, really helpful. This is a really, yeah, please, yeah.
Well, as the humans were created, God intended us to have a relationship with him. And out of all the things that have been created, the human being is unique as other things are unique. But I don't see Satan as a human. I see these other things as non-humans, but we are human. So God spoke to Adam and Eve and dealt with them very differently. So mercy seems to be something that humans are made to receive. I'm not hearing. We can't hear.
Eat 'em like food, so So he didn't abandon them.
Yeah, Audrey just said he didn't abandon them. He showed them his mercy by clothing them, caring, relating to them, you know, all of that. And I think it's absolutely,
Forgive them.
No. he didn't, we didn't see that yet. We don't see it yet, except where he said to the serpent, the offspring of Eve is going to destroy your head and defeat this whole situation. Yeah,
I see.
yeah. There is punishment. But I do see grace in that he didn't destroy them. Isn't that grace? Yeah.
His forgiveness.
They might have felt that way. I don't, you know, but you know, I love what Paul says, but because, and remember when he says this about God is consigned all to disobedience, that he have mercy on all. He says, oh, the depths and riches and wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and inscrutable his ways. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? When we get into some of these questions, we're like starting to get into God's mind. And how can we do that? Can we get it figured out? No. So we have to, but again, it goes to this, what is our anthropology? What is the state of human beings? And there's different ways of looking at this. Luther's way of looking at it, and I think a lot of Judeo-Christian history's way of looking at it, is that human beings now are stuck in sin. You want to know why we need governments? Because we're sinners.
Yeah.
We're sinners. Human being is sinners. So we need laws and we need enforcement. Human beings are sinners. If we were not sinners, we don't need any politicians. We don't need a government, and we certainly don't need any highway patrolmen to stop me from speeding. But no, I didn't. It just still correct. No. So so that's why we need to, because we're sinners. And guess what our incredible founding fathers and mothers knew when they set up our government? Human beings are sinners.
Yeah. They're no damn good.
They're no damn good. Yeah. And so let's set up a government where you have checks and balances and everybody's looking over each other, and it makes it really hard to get anything done, because if you give power to one person, you got a problem. So that's the way they set it up. Yeah.
Bill? You're cutting in and out.
Yes, it is here too.
I can't hear anything you're saying, Bill.
I'll repeat it, Ace. Yeah.
For example, the one that wrote, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound to save a wretch like me. I mean, just, that's a lot of us know that background, but there's
Yeah.
so many other interesting backgrounds of people responding to
Yeah.
how they are
That's
created.
a great resource.
In response to the Bible.
That's a great resource. I've got the echo microphone on, everybody. I've got everything on, and I've got it as loud as it'll go. So Bill was just talking about a resource regarding hymns that.
Did you pay your bill?
What? Okay, so we were there, and then somebody else was going. Ace. Oh, Ace, go ahead.
A lot of people in the past have said that I've been talking with have said that a person who commits suicide will not be able to go to heaven.
So, I actually think when Jesus says in the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, think he's thinking about those people. Because they're the ultimate poor in spirit. Lutherans don't believe that, Ace. I know that's been a thing that because you can't, it's a mortal sin, and so you can't ask forgiveness for mortal sin, and therefore you're going to hell. That's comes out of the Western church's view of penance, actually, because you have venial sins and mortal sins, and murdering, killing is a mortal sin, and if you don't get confession and absolution before you die for that, then you are toast. So the church has that history that suicide puts you in hell, that there's no options about that. So Lutherans, say pause on that. Okay, so and we'll get back to the text here. So here's the thing pastorally. I'm not going to say somebody isn't, because I've talked to at least 10 people who almost killed themselves, and that's the only reason they didn't, because they were afraid they'd go to hell. And I don't want to take away a reason why somebody doesn't kill themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we don't say that automatically happens or something like that. That is not our theology, and that's a great question, Ace, and I hope that was a helpful answer. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, if you're that depressed, and I think you're in that category. So I don't think that ties God's hands as far as being graceful. Yeah.
Thinking about suicide, take the case of a person that's in a prison camp.
Yeah.
They've been there for several years.
Right.
They're tortured every day.
Yeah.
And they commit suicide
Yeah.
because they don't want to.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Or medically, you know that you're dying.
yeah. Well, and then but now you're getting us into another son. So those are great questions. Let's get, go ahead. Let's go back to the text. We got to get through the end of the chapter at least, but you finish. Okay, so we'll get back to Genesis. To the woman, he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. I'm just going to read through the rest of this. In pain, you shall bring forth children. Like one might ask, how come this is so hard? Well, in a simple way, let's keep this simple. Genesis is giving an answer that the reason it flows out of this move of Adam and Eve wanting to be wise on their own account, moving out of God, dependence on God's mercy and his care, and going to be wise on their own account. This is the consequence of that. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. This is a tough one to translate, or it might be your desire shall be for your husband, which is, I think, the way oftentimes it's been translated. And he will rule over you. So why? One person explained this that I did some research on, that when you are in a relationship, when one person is more dependent on the other, who has the power? The person that isn't that dependent on the other. It's kind of like, if I'm in a relationship with someone and I just adore them and love them, but they can care less about me, who has the power? They do. Well, I think it's a little bit like this, but the ruling over isn't really justified here. It's a result of sin and brokenness, right?
They were not designed that way.
We were not designed that way. They were not designed that way, and that way they were to be complementary. Help, Eve was a helper like God helps us, so there's that relational aspect. Yeah, excellent. To Adam, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you. Now, remember when we were wrestling with, did Adam hear the devil talk to, or the serpent talk to, Eve? And I said, well, the serpent really had to work on Eve, but not so much on Adam. And I know some of you, I think, struggled with that, but I was just joking anyway. But anyway, hey, Adam listened to Eve. He didn't listen to Which is interesting, and have eaten of the tree. I've even heard some people go, well, see, you know, this is another reason why men have the power, and, you know, you wouldn't believe where people have gone with this, but yes, you would. Of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, and for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So, yes, please. And again, I don't know why our deal isn't working so good, but speak as loud as you can.
I have a note written in my Bible that says, women received heartache and man received headaches.
Oh. Women received heartache and man received headache. Go with that. I'll go with that. Yeah. And I don't know who got it worse, because I've watched childbirth, so. I'm not worthy. Women are the stronger sex, so as far as I'm, so anyway, so yeah, we see the consequences here. And there's a lot of ways we can go with this. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
It's really cool. I give it to you afterwards to look at, but it's it was for school, and it's from a Hebrew scholar's perspective, and this is poetry in a lot of Bibles.
Yes.
And, that word for mine says, with pangs you shall eat from it all the days of your life, and that's to parallel the women's birth pangs.
With pangs, yeah, so even in English, it's the same Hebrew word, yeah, oh yeah, good. Yeah. So we both got heart and headaches. Yeah, no, that's helpful. You know, we say this when do you hear these words? Ash Wednesday. We are mortal. We were taken from the ground, and we now are going to return to the ground. And our movement, do you remember what Jesus said it's like to be in heaven? You remember? Anybody remember? Jesus tells us what it's going to be like. Paradise. Today you'll be with me in paradise. So I think somewhere he actually tells us what it's going to be like in paradise.
Do they have McDonald's?
No. Maybe, I don't know. And hope it'll have some really good pizza that you can eat all you want and never get. Okay, Kathy, good. No more tears, no more sorrow. That is what it's going to be like. No more death that he mentions. Many mansions, I prepare a place for you. That, by the way, in John 14 is like a dwelling place or even a temporary place. A lot of people think Jesus is talking about heaven and not the new creation where we are resurrected, but I don't know if that's true. But yeah, so we got this mansion where there's no pain, no sorrow, no nothing like that. Remember when there were some Sadducees? You remember those guys? They said that there's no resurrection. That one of the four Jewish groups, thank you, of Jesus' day. Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Zealots. Zealots were like the military folks. Essenes were the monks. They said everything's so corrupt, we're going to go withdraw and hide away. And then we hear of two on the New Testament, in particular, Pharisees and Sadducees. The Pharisees were told by the gospel writers didn't believe in the resurrection. And so Jesus is talking about the resurrection. Did I say the Pharisees? Yeah, the Sadducees. The Pharisees did. But so they're battling out with Jesus. And Jesus, and so you remember their trick on Jesus? Do you remember what they asked him?
The wife, the husband and wife.
Yeah. Okay, because in Jewish law, if I've got 6 brothers and I'm married and I die, one of my brothers marries my wife to take care of her. And then if that one dies, then, and so the Sadducees, give Jesus this story. Now, who were they married to in heaven? And Jesus says, you silly people, you don't marry and etc. in heaven, but you're like the angels. You're not angels, but you're like the angels. That's the only thing Jesus tells us. Because here in the scripture, no pain, no sorrow, you'll be like the angels. Well, we will be like the angels in the resurrection. And Adam and Eve, had they not done what they did, would have moved at some point into that kind of realm. But now because of what they did, there's something in between that. What is it? Death. We're gonna die. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. I think this is so important because this puts us in our place. We are not creators, we are the creature. And that's what we start Ash Wednesday by reminding each other of. We put ashes on our forehead. Why do we do that? Help me out. Because obviously they're dust, Pastor Bill. So it's your dust, your ashes, that's what we're going to be at some point, whether we're cremated or not. I mean, that's where we go. Okay. Yeah. And we make the sign of the cross, don't we? And then what also are ashes, especially in the ancient time? Remember when you heard that somebody was really sorry for their sin, what did they put on? Sackcloth and ashes. So yes, it says, Bill, you're mortal, but it also says, Bill, you're forgiven. There's the sign of the cross with the ashes. So and it's just exactly what Adam and Eve, needed. It's what we need. We need, yeah, you're mortal. This is going to happen, but God has not abandoned you. And he sent Jesus to die on the cross and cleanses you of your sin. Ashes were a cleansing agent. And so all of that is wrapped up in Ash Wednesday. Pretty cool, huh? And my first congregation, because they didn't want to look like Roman Catholics, sadly, on this one anyway, they didn't do ashes. They had Ash Wednesday, but they didn't do ashes. And I said, listen, we're doing ashes. I'm putting ashes on every one of your heads. They're like, what are we trying to be, Catholic? No, we're trying to be Christian. We're trying to be, so it's unfortunate that we've had that to deal with. So yeah, it's just so rich, so powerful, this whole thing. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. All right. How we doing? Other comments? Like, wow, this is cool. Or I have this question, Kathy.
My and the fact that Eve is also grace.
So the Eve is the fact that she will bear children is mercy. Again, God doesn't end. God doesn't say, oop, mistake, no more. Yeah, that's good. Love it. Love it. And there's no children, before this. Although we're going to find out very soon that we hear about people that weren't in this group, which we'll deal with that when we get there. Yeah, Ross,
I was just thinking, so God tells her you're going to have a son that kills his brother. That's grace.
No, we're going to have the human race, and it's going to keep going. But that I know it's an interesting comment, Ross, because God is going to keep life going despite human sin. That's the way I would say it. Yeah. Even though God knows where this is going. And then God, when Cain and Abel, which we'll hear in just a second, do what they did, God's gonna does he destroy Cain for killing Abel? Does he kill him? No. Yeah.
That's where he begins to set his standard.
Yeah. He sets his standard, and I would say we see, of course, what is what we're gonna see. Maybe this is a good time to say this. When you throw a rock in a pond, what happens? That's what we're gonna see now. We're gonna start seeing, we saw Adam and Eve, and we're just gonna see it keep going. You know, so, yeah. Which, because of that, we're also gonna keep now seeing God's grace and mercy. As we see human sin, Paul actually says it this way: the more sin increased, grace increased. That's what he says in Romans. That's wild. That. Okay, good stuff. How are we doing? Okay. Oh, we have a hand up there. Yep. Everybody good at home? Okay. Looks like we are. Excellent. Let's keep going. Then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Am I still sharing my screen at home? I think so. Yeah. Okay. Knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and live forever. So there's the source of immortality. Therefore, the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. Now, before we get to he drove out the man, knowing good and evil, there's that phrase again, right? We go back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, etc. Was the tree of knowledge of good and evil bad? Gloria says no. I'm kind of with you. I think it's, I don't know if I want to say it's actually good. And God says, I don't want you to eat of that tree. I did a little search on this passage. You know where this good and evil phrase shows up? Let's see. Oh, let me go here. Let's see, one more. No. Oh, okay. I'll have to do my search again. Hold on 1 second. Let's do this search, and let me put it over here where you guys can see it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do just good and evil. Let's see what comes up in the Old Testament. Look at that. All here in Genesis, once in 2 Samuel, and this one in Kings is interesting. Who's he talking to here? Who's going on? Who's talking? Solomon's prayer for wisdom. Who was Solomon? The most. What's Solomon's prayer? Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and made offerings at the high places. I love that. He was just so great, but he also did that. And the king went to Gibeon, etc. We go down, and then this is Solomon's prayer. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may what? Discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people? And it pleased the Lord that Solomon asked this. Why do you think it pleased God that Solomon asked it? Well, Solomon did a lot of bad things, but what he's doing here is different than what Adam and Eve did. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Will you give it to me, or do I take it? There's the problem. Now Adam and Eve have done that, and that's the difference, I think. The tree was there. God was going to give them knowledge and wisdom. He created them in his image, but now they want to take it. They want to kind of, one, decide good and evil, but two, also, they want to be wise on their own. And I think, that this is just an interesting parallel. Please.
Because God created us, he knows what's in our hearts and minds. Did he not know that Eve was going to succumb to Satan and take that fruit?
Well, that's just what we've been wrestling with. Joyce thinks yes, Bill thinks that he knew, he gave him the potential. And I'm somewhere in the middle, I don't know. Well, and although a lot of people would say, yes, he knew, but that didn't mean he willed it. He had the foreknowledge of it, but that wasn't necessarily what he wanted to have happen. But then we just were wrestling, Melanie, with Paul's God consigned all people, into disobedience. So what is that in Romans? So anyway, so there you go. This is interesting. So they become like us really on their own terms. Now they're going out. So this is the other consequence. And he drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed the cherubim and flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Now, Revelation. You just went right there, didn't you? Yeah, absolutely. Because we hear about this tree of life again in Revelation. Yeah, the cherubim and all of that, but now in the vision, the apocalypse of John, we hear about this tree again. And from its flowing springs of life and this types of things. And this is the part. Yeah, Carrie.
Is the tree of life Christ?
Is the tree of life Christ? Nice question. No, nice question. Is the tree of life Christ? That is where our life comes from. He is the one that gives us eternal life, yeah. So I think you could make some connections there, Carrie. Maybe we hold on to that and keep looking at as we go. Let's just but just for the sake of this, for fun, let's go back up here and do tree of life and see. And I know it's freezing in here. At least obviously the heater is not working. So like I say, it's a broken world. Not fuzzy Bible church. We don't need that. Okay, so look at this. Where does it show up? The fruit of righteousness is the tree of life. Whoever captures soul, and whoever captures souls is wise, or so we got some in the wisdom literature. Interesting. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. So, and then look where it shows up. In Revelation 2:7. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So here, Jesus would seem to be the access to the tree of life. Whereas you've got this barrier now. Now Jesus is the one who gives that. And the one who conquers is the one who trusts and believes and endures in that belief. So
Does that mean it's in heaven?
yes,
Tree of life, which is in.
yeah. In the new creation, I would even say, in the new creation,
In some sense, the tree of life, if you eat of the tree of life, that's what we do in communion.
Well, we get a foretaste of that tree, that life, don't we, in communion? Absolutely. So we see of it, showing up some more, and in the letter of Revelation. So, okay, any questions?
If there's no tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
There isn't, right? We don't hear about that in Revelation. They don't need it. It's gone. They have it. Yeah.
Or there's no evil.
And there's no evil, and there's no that whole dilemma is put away. Yeah. Nice point, Kim. Very good. Let's just read the first couple of verses just to set you up for next week. Now, Adam and Eve knew his wife, and in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew scriptures, the word know is the word for intercourse, which actually, it's actually very powerful in a lot of ways. So Adam knew his wife, because it's not just the act of intercourse. It's knowing, it's that, again, the two shall become one flesh. And she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I've gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was the keeper of sheep and Cain worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Why did God do that? This is sounding like Joyce's God, a God that potentially causes problems. It wasn't the first fruits. Yeah. Ross just said it wasn't the first fruits. Maybe that's why God didn't have regard for that. So Cain was very angry and his face fell, and oh my goodness, something not good is going to happen here, and we'll talk about it next week. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Great work out there. Let's see. But I'm going to switch on my microphone here. Well, Abby, can I ask you, or so?
Yeah.
Are you also having trouble hearing people?
I couldn't hear what you just asked, but I sometimes can't hear, but other times it's just fine.
Yeah, same here.
It's gonna hear all the background noise.
It's the same here.
So how about, Bruce and Kathy, you're veterans of this. Are you able to hear other people in the room when they talk? Oh, you're muted.
Okay.
You're still muted.
There we go. Sorry, took me a minute. Yeah, I can hear. It's faint, but I can hear them. Bruce can't very well.
That's the echoing.
Yeah, that's why I try and repeat. So on your device, my suggestion, I don't think there's anything wrong with my thing. I think it does as best it can. Although I'm thinking about doing something different next week so you can hear better. It might be that we use a different system, but when I'm not speaking and somebody in the room is speaking, if you know how to turn the volume up on your computer or iPad, that's what you can do. Unless you've got it on all the way up already.
No.
But so that's where if you your device ready, so when other people in the room are talking, you can bring, and then when I start talking, you can bring it down. That's about the only thing I can think of. So yes. Oh.
And then when she was done. Yes.
See, what she was just saying there is all chopped up. You can hear,
Yeah, I couldn't hear her very well.
can't hear you either at all.
Yeah, now I can't hear you either.
Hold on. The
Hey
reason.
there.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, the reason is that the owl is picking up all the sounds in the room and everybody's talking. So that's why you couldn't hear. Lisa, come back for a minute. So,
Say this.
so I heard Sharon here. Yeah, and that's, yeah. When Sharon was talking at home with Bert and Sharon, I heard her. Yeah, but you didn't.
Like you didn't hear it because other conversations happened. There was like a brief,
Yeah. Yeah. I know the owl dropped 2 weeks ago, but it's worked okay in room 4. And I'm just pondering whether I need to come up with go back to the old system where I set up a phone and an iPad for in-house. And then we use it's a more set up. more of a pain, but if people at home are having trouble hearing,
Yeah,
you can
we
do
are.
something good. Yes. Yeah, and share, well, she can, and then she couldn't. Yeah, so, okay. We'll problem solve, everybody at home. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep,
thanks.
Yeah.